the sky, the warm sun. Each of these things is disparate in appearance, but they are all the result of a differentiation of one universal vibration. How is it that this one vibratory cosmic energy becomes solids or liquids or gases? By what mysterious process are these varying rates of vibration so coordinated as to make human life possible? Behind all manifestation there must be a guiding intelligent force that is the prime cause of all creation. For instance, we are here on our little Earth somewhere in space, orbiting the far distant sun of our universe. Without the cooperation of the sun's light and warmth, life on Earth could not exist. We have the sensation of hunger, and nature supplies our need for food. When ingested, some unknown power transforms that food into energy and tissues for the body. All the miracles of life that we take for granted are proof of the existence of an omnipresent divine intelligence behind the processes of nature. Beholding the blossoms of the earth and the starry flowers in the infinite fields of the sky, how can one not wonder, is there a hidden beauty behind these finite patterns? Is there an intelligence behind man's intellect? The blossoms of life in the garden of earthly existence are enchanting to behold. But somewhere there is a fount of beauty and intelligence, even more enthralling, from which we have come and into which we shall merge again. Everything in the universe is related. Through the right use of our God-given human intelligence, we begin to see that all life is linked to one supreme intelligence. We may sometimes think we are puppets of destiny, but when we project our intelligence beyond limited elusive forms and examine the extent of our consciousness and mental perception, we realize that within us there is a spark of the divine power, that which is creating and sustaining all life, just waiting to be kindled. In the scriptures of every true religion we read that God is all-powerful, infinite, and eternal. Through the windows of the scriptures we glimpse the divine power in which all things are rooted. But our minds, with their finite understanding conditioned by the laws of causation, cannot encompass eternity, so we live within the limited circle of our mental capacity. Almighty God is both within and beyond that circle. In the Bhagavad Gita it is said, "Some behold the soul in amazement. Similarly others describe it as marvelous. Still others listen about the soul as wondrous." And there are others who, even after hearing all about the soul, do not comprehend it at all. In countless ways, human reasoning shows us that God is the cause of all things. But proof of the existence of God cannot be had by intellectual deduction alone. If we are to realize God, which is the sole purpose of our existence, we must learn to go beyond ordinary thought processes, for He is beyond the measure of human reason. He cannot be fully grasped by a mind always occupied with objects of desire and with emotional disturbances of pleasure and pain. To attain a higher state of consciousness and divine perception, it is necessary through meditation to withdraw the mind from its continual restless activity. In that interiorized state, spiritual sensitivity or intuition awakens. Intuition is that power of spirit inherited by the soul by which truth is perceived directly, without the medium of any other faculty. As the vastness of the ocean cannot be contained in a small cup, so it is impossible to receive infinite wisdom in the finite cup of human intelligence. Man's consciousness must be expanded, if it is to hold the illimitable ocean of truth. Proof of God's existence is felt in meditation. As confined water rushes out in all directions when the walls that hold it are broken, so also the consciousness of man is freed when the embankments of bigotry, egocentricity, and restlessness are broken. By the practice of meditation, the consciousness expands and merges with the blissful, omnipresent consciousness of spirit. The purpose of meditation is to calm the mind, that without distortion it may mirror omnipresence. Calmness in meditation is the primary positive state of mental expansion. The bliss of divine union with God is the final state. The ultimate proof of God's existence will come through your own experience in meditation. Once you have found Him in the cathedral of silent meditation in the depths of your soul, you will find Him everywhere. Chapter: Doubt, Belief, and Faith. Everything in the Lord's creation has some specific utility. All matter, however insignificant, has a particular purpose and effect. This is true also in regard to the thoughts or sentiments that present themselves to our consciousness and then pass away. We little know what effect such notions produce in us, or in what lies their utility, for which reason they were created within us. If you think of a piece of copper, you know its usefulness. But when you consider a single thought, what is its utility? Analyze that query. As the world is composed of atoms and molecules, so the inner being, the nature or character of a person, is composed of atoms and molecules of thoughts. If you wish to understand the quality of your inner light, trace the growth of every thought, and in the balance of your judgment weigh its relative utility. Today we shall weigh the sentiments of doubt, belief, and faith. These are the crux of controversy in religion. Great teachers exhort people to believe and have faith in God and Scripture, and warn against the potential devastation of doubt. But, without discrimination, the utility of this counsel may not be understood. Since nothing has been created without having some use, I cannot agree with scriptural moralists who at the very mention of doubt turn up their noses at an angle of 120 degrees. Instead, let us judge why the principle of doubt has come into the world at all. Wherein is doubt bad or good for human beings? Unless we analyze the psychology of doubt and of belief and faith, we cannot reasonably adopt or reject these sentiments on the basis of their being beneficial or destructive. By analysis, we find in the concept of doubt a constructive as well as a destructive element, according to its application. I need not discuss at length the destructive element, for its adverse effects are commonly acknowledged. Because of its potential harm, some religionists, particularly those who hold blindly to dogmatic beliefs, advocate the eschewal of all doubt in favor of unquestioning acceptance. But, to avoid doubt is to choose not to think. Destructive doubt is paralyzing. It inhibits constructive thought and the power of will. It blocks receptivity to the beneficent workings of higher forces and laws in the universe, and to the ever-ready-to-help grace of God. It produces an inner disquietude and sense of hopelessness. It resists progress and rejects ideas on the whims of ignorance, prejudice, or emotion. But let us consider the constructive element of doubt. If man could not doubt, he could not progress. The predominance of matter before our eyes in the form of objects and beings prevents our perception of the whole of truth. It is by doubting the preeminence of matter that the existence of God is established. If matter, a conglomeration of atoms, is all there is, then how do these invisible particles hold a parliament and bring forth and govern such an organized universe? It is impossible that inanimate atoms could put themselves together and produce intelligent beings. So the acceptance of God, an intelligent consciousness as the creator of this world, was established from materialism by applying the constructive, progressive element of doubt. This constructive element is the scientific current of thought by which we question in order to know what is true. Without this, if we merely accepted things as they appear to be, man would become as animals. Some ancient civilizations held the view that the sun, moon, and stars were deities governing their lives. Man outgrew that concept by the process of doubt. Through constructive questioning, such belief was found to be wanting. If man could not doubt, he could not progress. The world would be mired in ignorance. We would not be able to differentiate theory or fallacious arguments from the truth if we did not question. It is therefore right to apply the laws of reason. Doubt decides a hypothesis. Scientists take such a theorem and investigate it along with their ever-present examiner, Mr. Doubt. Nothing is taken for granted. The proposition is carried to a conclusion to see whether it works or not. If it doesn't, it is set aside or restructured. If scientists remain satisfied with the status quo of knowledge, there would be no furtherance of civilization. There is a great lesson therein. In regard to religion, scientists should employ the same openness of the constructive element of doubt with which they approach their research in science. For far too long science has been locked into the destructive element of doubt in dismissing religion offhand as superstitious dogma. If it were the aim of the consortium of construction workers only to demolish all defective buildings rather than reconstructing them, or without replacing them with improved structures, that would be disastrous. It is the same with those who would do away with morality and religion, leaving behind no structure for the housing of divine principles that can be proven essential to the welfare and happiness of human existence. Of course, even the destructive element of doubt may be necessary to rid us of long-held errors, but if that process obliterates truth as well, then it is harmful to humanity. Constructive doubt moves us toward truth. Doubt is dynamic energy that should be properly harnessed to move us to progressive actions. If by constructive doubt we destroy some of our cherished theories, even that is better than just blindly and dumbly following others, the blind leading the blind. Constructive doubt in regard to divine matters will move us toward truth more quickly than will dogmatic belief. The latter makes us lack the clarity of mind necessary to perceive correctly the truth already given to us by God. Dogmatism confounds the ability to fathom the depth of the verities preached by the great ones, such as Jesus in the New Testament and Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Religion, like science, should be given a proper test. That is how the God-knowing rishis of old attained their realization. They investigated, found, and proved for themselves those invariable principles that demonstrate and make manifest the eternal reality. The great masters ask us to believe, but they do not say we should not use constructive doubt to question. Suppose some error is printed in Scripture. Instead of "do not steal," the word "not" is left out so that it reads "do steal." To accept blindly is to accept errors that creep in, the slip of the pen of the writer, the error of the printer. Apply the test of reason. If you can analyze ideas with unprejudiced respect and discrimination, you will more readily apprehend truth and discern what is untruth. You are endowed by God with the power to understand if you but use your instruments of intelligence according to the laws He has given. Treat religion with the same spirit applied to the sciences. Without doubt and investigation, many will not reach truth. Reasonable questioning will destroy the shaky supports of dogmatic fanaticism and help to build instead a strong foundation of beliefs whereon the superstructure of faith might rest. Faith begins with constructive belief. Belief and faith are often used synonymously, and thus not always correctly. Faith is something much more than mere belief, as will be shown. In belief as in doubt, there is a constructive and a destructive element. Applied constructively, adherence to valid beliefs leads to realization. Nominal truths cannot be understood by the sensory mind. Phenomena can be interpreted by the intellect from sensory experience, but not the substance or noumena underlying it. This requires inner enlightenment. Thus does the teacher who has attained realization say to the undeveloped disciple, "Until you are able to understand, believe and follow me." That does not mean blind acceptance. Constructive belief has reason within it. Reason and feeling confirm that there is some truth behind every valid belief. If one can gain access to his inherent discriminative intelligence, he can arrive at that truth. the inner comprehension of truth that is attainable only by the spiritual development of the soul's intuitive powers of perception. Until then, there might be contradiction between the devotee's reason and the master's realization. So true masters must ask their disciples to believe, to take for granted certain concepts on their authority, knowing that in time they can realize those truths for themselves. Such is the principle of any investigation. If a mathematics professor explains calculus to you, but you close your mind and say you do not believe him, because at the moment you do not understand, then he cannot teach you. First you have to take pencil and paper and obey his instruction. Then if you do not get the promised results, you will be justified in doubting. But you must be careful before you pronounce judgment. Be sure you do not commit any error in solving the problem. So you see, you must begin with belief. Fundamentals of belief. Belief is a state or habit of mind in which trust, confidence, is placed in some person, thing, or doctrine, such as a persuasion of the truths in religion. Belief is a conviction or feeling of the truth or reality of that which is believed. The elements of belief are assent, credence, assurance, reliance, persuasion, conviction, faith. Belief, faith, persuasion, conviction are present singularly or in combination in the idea of assent. Belief and faith differ chiefly in that belief as a rule suggests little more than intellectual assent, while faith implies total trust or confidence, as in one whose persuasion or belief has ripened into faith. A persuasion is an assured opinion, an idea of which one has convinced himself, as it is my persuasion that he is a dishonest person. It implies that this assurance is induced by one's feelings or wishes, rather than by argument or evidence. Conviction stands for a fixed and settled belief, as his persuasion has been forged into a feeling of certainty. Credence gives substance to belief. Something must be considered believable to be held as true. Belief depends also on reliance, which is confidence in the thing believed arising from supportive evidence. Implicit in belief are the elements of will and imagination. Without willingness one cannot believe. And since belief is an uncertain waiting in the hope of obtaining a result, it involves also imagination. Don imagines that he will be successful in the jute business. Hence he is said to believe in his business venture. The elements of will and imagination in belief make it a powerful force for good or ill. Injudicious beliefs seem a wastage of good energy. Belief in a deceitful person, a failing business, or a false doctrine seems to be a sheer wastage of man's good energy through its wrong direction. Such injudicious beliefs achieve little more than bitter experiences. A hypocritical friend may long command our belief in him. A doomed business may similarly persist in our minds as worthy of support, but sooner or later they are sure to lose our belief through the revelation of facts. Hence, in material things wrong beliefs are liable to be less wasteful, since our minds are bent toward tangible results. In contrast, concerning spiritual matters, our mental attitude often remains vague and visionary. Teachers or doctrines exhort us to believe and have faith, while offering very little explanation or understanding as to the nature of this virtue and how to possess it. Blind acceptance is the general rule and the only recourse for most adherents. Hence, belief and faith in connection with religious life are least understood. Their dynamic power for the majority of religionists remains something nebulous, indefinite, unculturable, the possession of a gifted few on whom God has bestowed His grace. For the many others, belief in spiritual matters is employed blindly, because things of the spirit are deemed mystical and beyond human ken. An erroneous belief, if held to without scrutiny, develops into tenacious dogmatism. A belief that is disproved changes from dogmatism to unbelief. On the other hand, if one believes in a true doctrine and follows it persistently, that belief gradually crystallizes into conviction and faith. So we see that a belief, whether false or true, is provisional. It can only be temporary, for it is subsequently metamorphosed either into dogmatism or unbelief or into faith. Rudimentary or immature belief not secured in truth is of three kinds. A blind, be steady and strong, see curiosity awakened. A belief born of emotion or sentiment begins with high-sounding faith, as I will follow you unto death. But it ends in violent denunciation when tested with criticism or contradiction. Be the followers of the second group, add tenacity to blind belief. They live and die in the same emotional convictions, even if wholly erroneous. This is little more than the savage state of existence, which is controlled by superstition. See, persons are a bit safer with beliefs that begin and end in curiosity. When they find out that their inquisitiveness has led them down a wrong path, they quickly give up that pursuit and are delighted to seek after something new. Beyond these three is investigative belief. This is based on logical acceptance. It always keeps its eyes and ears open, ever ready to inquire about anything to which it has been attracted by persuasion or interest. This form of belief, however, can easily develop into a habit of fickleness. It may capriciously give up not only that which is erroneous, but also that which is true. The genesis of faith. What is needed is investigative belief with sincerity and reverence, followed up with persistence in true beliefs, or at least in those beliefs that constantly manifest convincing results. Through the aperture of patience, drop by drop, the chemical of truth enters and crystallizes such belief into solid faith. But, unless belief is founded on truth, it will not sustain the conviction that produces progress toward faith. Faith may manifest itself in many areas of belief if there is truth inherent in one's sincere convictions. Firm belief or trust as in a person, thing, doctrine, or idea, such as faith in God, faith in medicine. Recognition of spiritual realities and moral principles as supreme. Historical faith, as in the truthfulness and authority of scriptural narrative and teachings. Or practical faith, through the acceptance by the intellect, affection, and will, in God's favor extended to man through his divine emissaries. The aggregate of that which is believed, a system of religious beliefs as the Christian faith or Vedic authority. The result of faith is the stable quality or state of faithfulness, fidelity, loyalty. Have intrepid faith despite life's enigmas. Life, its substance and purpose, is an enigma, difficult yet not unknowable. With our progressive thinking, we are daily solving some of its secrets. The minutely and scientifically calculated devices of this modern age are certainly remarkable. The proliferating discoveries of physical science are creditably giving us a clearer vision of the ways by which life can be improved. But, in spite of all our devices and strategies and inventions, it seems we are still playthings in the hands of destiny, and have a long way to go before we can be independent of nature's domination. To be constantly at the mercies of nature, surely that is not freedom. Our enthusiastic minds are rudely seized by a sense of helplessness when we are victimized by floods, tornadoes, or earthquakes, or when, apparently without rhyme or reason, illness or accident snatches our dear ones from our bosom. It is then that we know we really haven't conquered much. In spite of all our efforts to make life what we want it to be, there will always remain certain conditions introduced on this planet, infinite and guided by an unknown intelligence, operating without our initiative, which preclude our control. At best, we can only work and make some improvements. We sow the wheat and make the flour, but who made the original seed? We eat the bread made from the flour, but who made it possible for us to digest and assimilate it? In every department of life there seems to be, in spite of our instrumentality, an inevitable divine dependence without which we cannot get along. With all our certainties, we still have to abide an uncertain existence. We do not know when the heart is going to fail. Hence comes the necessity of a fearless reliance on our true immortal self and on the supreme deity in whose image that self is made, a faith that acts without egoism and plods on merrily, knowing no trepidation or constraint. Exercise absolute fearless surrender to that higher power. Never mind that today you make the resolution that you are free and undaunted, and then tomorrow you catch the flu and become miserably sick. Don't weaken. Command your consciousness to remain steadfast in its faith. The self cannot be contaminated by sickness. Maladies of the body come to you through the law of self-created habits of ill health lodged in your subconscious mind. Such karmic manifestations do not disprove the efficacy, the dynamic power of faith. Hold to the helm of faith and mind not the buffeting of untoward circumstances. Be more furious than the fury of misfortune, more audacious than your dangers. The more this newfound faith will work its dynamic influence on you, the more your slavery to weakness will wane proportionately. Not a corpuscle of blood can move, nor a puff of breath enter your nostrils without the commandment of the Lord. Hence, absolute surrender to God is the criterion of faith. This surrender is not laziness, expecting God to do everything for you. Your utmost effort to bring about the desired result is also necessary. Rather, it is a surrender through love for God and veneration of His supremacy. No matter what the obstacles, I would work to the last breath in me in complete surrender to God, but I would never surrender through cowardice or fear of failure. Faith is ever secure, direct perception of truth. Faith not only produces results in healing or in other successes, it is also the power that reveals the outworking of spiritual laws that underlay all so-called miracles. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hoped for impossibilities will be realized through the power of this faith, which believes without seeing, which believes even in the face of all odds. Faith is realization itself. It harbors no destructive element as does belief. Belief can be swayed or destroyed by contrary evidence and doubt, but faith is ever secure because it is direct perception of truth. Once the world was believed to be flat, but with the progress of science it was found to be round, so that was only a belief which had to be given up. But faith cannot be contradicted, for it is the developed expression of the unerring intuition within us, which brings us face to face with their tough or unseen realities. One may thus rightly refer to blind belief, but not blind faith. The soul's realization of truth expresses itself to us through intuition, and a resultant knowing is faith. Intuition is that point wherein a conviction suddenly changes into the direct perception of the truth of that belief. It requires no intermediary, no proof from the testimony of the senses or reason. For example, how do you know you exist? You know because you know. There is no doubt. Nothing in this world would make you believe otherwise. Even if you were paralyzed and could not see yourself, still you would feel or experience your existence through the perception of the soul. Faith is the A, B, C, D of intuition. It is a deep feeling of knowing within you. Most everyone has experienced a hunch that has come true. That is a manifestation of developing or uncontrolled intuition. Intelligence directed to the outward world interprets phenomena. Faith turned inwardly interprets by its contact with noumena, the intuitions of the soul. All things can be brought to light by the power of faith. In calmness, intuition gives birth to faith. The Sanskrit word for faith is wonderfully expressive. It is visvas. The common literal rendering to breathe easy, have trust, be free from fear does not convey the full meaning. Sanskrit svas refers to the motions of breath, implying thereby life and feeling. Vi conveys the meaning of opposite, without. That is, he whose breath, life, and feeling are calm, he can have faith born of intuition. It cannot be possessed by persons who are emotionally restless. The cultivation of intuitive calmness requires unfoldment of the inner life. When developed sufficiently, intuition brings immediate comprehension of truth. You can have this marvelous realization. Meditation is the way. Meditate with patience and persistence. In the gathering calmness, you will enter the realm of soul intuition. Throughout the ages, those beings who attained enlightenment were those who had recourse to this inner world of God communion. Jesus said, "When thou prayest, enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, pray to thy Father which is in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly." Go within the self, closing the door of the senses and their involvement with the restless world, and God will reveal to you all His wonders. In the inner communion of the soul with God, intuition begins to unfold naturally. Initially, a sort of provisional trust is necessary. Know that God is with you and that you are His child, made in His image. Surrender to Him through love. That conviction will gradually transform itself into faith through intuition. Beyond the senses and intellect, intuition manifests in the calm consciousness as feeling, perceived mostly through the heart. When such feeling comes in meditation, you receive through it a definite sense of right direction and unshakable conviction. Increasingly, you will be able to recognize and follow this intuition. That doesn't mean you give up reason. Calm, impartial reason can also lead to intuition. Use common sense. But remember that arrogant or emotional reasoning leads to misconceptions and mistakes. Reject the destructive element in doubt and belief and apply the constructive element. March on to the kingdom of faith. This is the way of development. In the calmness of meditation, your consciousness will be able to focus on truth and understand. In that state, faith develops. Through unfolding intuition, you receive the evidence of things not seen. Chapter: Visions of India. Evolving the Higher Self. Uniting East and West culturally and spiritually by an exchange of their finest distinctive features is an ideal for which Paramahansa Yogananda was noted throughout his life's work. Following article is one of his early commendations of his spiritual motherland, and what India had to offer to and receive from the West. Though the passage of many decades has wrought changes in circumstances and conditions in India and throughout the world, the underlying premise of this vision of India in the 1920s remains both valid and valuable as an overview of East-West unity. The central theme of India's spiritual message to the world is the importance of the unfoldment of the higher self, which inspired Paramahansaji's words in the second half of this article. India is an epitome of the world, a land of diverse climates, religions, commerce, arts, peoples, scenery, stages of civilization, languages. Her civilization dates back many thousands of years. Her great seers, prophets, and rulers left records behind them that prove the great antiquity of the Aryan civilization in India. Many Western travelers visit India, see a few of the street magicians, sword swallowers, or snake charmers, and think that is what India has to offer. But these men do not represent the true India. The real life and secret of India's vitality is her spiritual culture, from time immemorial, which has made her the motherland of religions. Although the West can teach India much about methods of sanitation, business, and development of resources, and although India needs business missionaries like Henry Ford and Thomas Edison, yet the Western lands too are thirsty, consciously or unconsciously, for the practical spiritual lessons in which India has specialized for centuries. In Western cities, science has progressed so far that the physical man is usually well taken care of, fed and clothed and sheltered. Yet physical and material comfort without mental and spiritual peace and solace is not enough. As the spiritual model of all religions, India has been the unproclaimed reformer, the grand inspirer of human minds and souls. Her greatest and richest legacy to mankind has been the techniques for the scientific spiritual culture of man, discovered and handed down through the centuries by her saints and seers. India is a land of mystery, but of mystery that reveals itself to the sympathetic inquirer and seeker. India has the grandest and highest mountains in the world, the Himalayas. Darjeeling in the north is the Switzerland of India. The unique ruins of ancient castles and spacious palaces of princes in Delhi, the vast extent of the Ganges made sacred through the centuries by the meditation near its banks of many God-realized saints, the sun-gilded teeth of the Himalayan mountain ridges, the ancient places of pilgrimage and the caves of meditation where yogis and swamis saw the faggots of ignorance set ablaze with the wisdom of God, the Taj Mahal at Agra, the finest dream of architecture ever materialized in marble to symbolize the ideal of human love, the dark forests and jungles where the lordly tigers roam, the blueness of the Indian skies and the bright sunshine, the sumptuous varieties of oriental fruits and vegetables, the multifarious types of people, all tend to make India different, fascinating, romantic, never to be forgotten. A land of great contrasts. India is a land of great contrasts, untold riches and utmost poverty, the highest mental purity and coarse, plain living, Rolls Royces and bullock carts, gaily caparisoned elephants and quaint horse wagons. In the north we find blue-eyed and blonde-haired Hindus, and in the hotter south, the dark sun-kissed skins of the tropics. From start to finish, India is a land of surprises, of contrasts and extremes. Life becomes prosaic with too much business, too many dull certainties. So in India one feels that life is a great adventure, an experience of mystery and surprise. India may not have material skyscrapers and all the sometimes spiritually enervating comforts of modern life. She has her faults, as all nations have. But India shelters many unassuming, Christ-like spiritual skyscrapers, who could teach the Western brothers and sisters how to glean the fullest spiritual joy out of any condition of life. Those scientific mystics and seers, who have known truth by their own effort and experience rather than remaining satisfied with ordinary, personally unverified beliefs, can show others how to develop their intuition and bring forth the fountain of peace and satisfaction from beneath the soil of mysteries. Though I have had the advantage of some Western education, yet I feel that in India alone I found the true solution to the mysteries of life. Visions of India's life-giving philosophy. From time immemorial, India's greatest minds have specialized in discovering and understanding the philosophy and meaning of life. One of the oft-disputed philosophical questions is whether the goal of human life is service or selfishness. Once I had a big controversy with a European who repeatedly and blindly affirmed that the goal of life was service, while I maintained that it was higher selfishness. I asked him again and again for his reasons in believing in service, but instead of satisfying my discrimination, he kept on reiterating service is the goal of life. It is blasphemous to doubt that. Finding him so dogmatic, I asked him, is service the goal of life because the scriptures have declared it? Yes, he vehemently replied. Do you believe everything literally in scripture? I questioned him. Do you think Jonah was swallowed by a whale and came out alive after a few days? How do you account for it? No, I do not understand how he could do that, my friend said. That was just the point. In order really to know the truth contained in scriptural stories, and in order to understand what is erroneous or right, literal or metaphorical, in scriptural writings, one must use reason, discrimination, and the power of intuitional verification developed through meditation. Many people think that whatever is in print must be correct. In particular, most religionists believe that anything wearing the robe of scriptural authority is absolutely beyond question. But, Putting on an outward garb cannot make one infallible. Writers of scriptures can also make mistakes, or more traditionally, hide truths in the veils of allegories, metaphors, and parables. In order to know the truth of a given doctrine, we must live it and find out if it works or not. Give it the acid test of experience. Let us get out into the world beyond dogmatism and compare our religious beliefs with the religious experience and realization of true teachers. Let us be iconoclastic of errors within us that need to be abolished. We should not harbor an undigested mass of theology and thus suffer from chronic theological indigestion. The ideal of service as explained by India's sages. The law of service to others is secondary and corollary to the law of self-interest or self-preservation, which may be termed selfishness. No sane man ever does anything without a reason. Religious doctrines and instructions may be based either on blind superstition or on real religious experience. The real reason behind the scriptural injunctions to serve thy fellowmen and love thy neighbor as thyself is that the law of service to others is to be obeyed by all devotees who would expand the limits of their own self. No action is performed without reference to a direct or indirect thought that is selfish. The very giving of service is indispensable to receiving service. To serve others by giving financial, mental, or moral help is to find self-satisfaction. If anyone knew beyond doubt that by service to others his own soul would be lost, would he serve? If Jesus had felt that by sacrificing his life on the altar of man's ignorance he would displease God, would he have acted as he did? No. He knew that although he had to lose the body, he was gaining his Father's favor and the emancipated rejoicing of his own soul. Such immortal sons of God, and all martyrs and saints, make a good investment. They spend the little mortal body to gain immortal life. Nothing worthwhile is gained without paying a price. Thus not even the most self-sacrificing act of service to others can be shown to be done without any thought of self. It is logical, therefore, to say that higher selfishness, or acting for the good of the higher self, rather than service to others without thought of self, is the motive of life. Man knows that he must give service to others, or otherwise he cannot rightly receive service from them. All beings are to some degree interdependent. Farmers gave up agricultural work, and businessmen gave up their service of transportation and distribution. Not even the renunciant could maintain himself. Nowadays, with increased population and wealth, even forests are divided off and owned by big landowners who placard the trees with signs warning the trespasser that he will be prosecuted for coming onto another man's property. So the renunciant cannot logically say, "I will not work or earn my living. I will subsist on the wild fruits of the forest." He must contribute some service for which, in return, he is entitled to receive material sustenance. Hence, service given and received, whether by the businessman who serves in a material way or by the spiritual renunciant who serves in a divine way, has reference to the goal of a lower or higher selfishness. 3 kinds of selfishness: evil, good, and sacred. We should, however, clearly distinguish the 3 kinds of selfishness: evil, good, and sacred. Evil selfishness is that which actuates a man to seek his own comfort by destroying the comforts of others. To be rich at the cost of others' loss is sin, and is against the interests of the higher individual self of the person who engages in such selfishness. To delight in hurting others' feelings by carping criticism is also evil selfishness. This malignant pleasure is not conducive to any lasting good. True and good selfishness motivates a man to seek his own comfort, prosperity, and happiness by also making others more prosperous and happy. Evil selfishness hides its many destructive teeth of inevitable suffering beneath the apparently innocent looks of temporary comfort assurances. Evil selfishness encloses one in a small circle and shuts out the rest of humanity. Good selfishness takes everybody along with one's own self into the circle of brotherhood. Good selfishness brings many harvests, return services from others, self-expansion, divine sympathy, lasting happiness, and self-realization. Good selfishness should be practiced by the businessman, who by sincere, honest, wholesome, constructive actions and labors enables himself to look after his own and his family's needs and provides a useful service to others. Such a businessman is far superior to one who thinks and acts only for himself, with no regard for those he serves or those dependent on him for support. The latter is acting against his own best selfish interests, for according to the law of cause and effect, he himself will in time attract suffering. The wealth of many misers is left to relatives who often squander it on wrong self-indulgences. Such selfishness in the end helps neither the giver nor the receiver. To avoid the pitfalls of evil selfishness, one should first follow and establish himself in the pattern of good selfishness, wherein one thinks of his family and those whom he serves as part of himself. From that attainment, one can then advance to a practice of sacred selfishness or unselfishness, as ordinary understanding would term it, in which one sees all the universe as himself. Being sacredly selfish. Feeling the sorrows of others and reaching out in order to make them free from further suffering, seeking happiness in the joy of others, constantly trying to remove the wants of increasingly larger numbers of people. This is being sacredly selfish. The man of sacred selfishness counts all his consequent earthly losses as sacrifices deliberately and willingly brought about by himself for others' good, and for his own great and ultimate gain. He lives to love his brethren, for he knows they are all children of the one God. His entire selfishness is sacred, for whenever he thinks of himself, he thinks not of the small body and mind of ordinary understanding, but of the needs of all bodies and minds within the range of his acquaintance or influence. His self becomes the self of all. He becomes the mind and feeling of all creatures. So when he does anything for himself, he can only do that which is good for all. He who considers himself as one whose body and limbs consist of all humanity and all creatures certainly finds the universal, all-pervading spirit as himself. He does not act with any expectation, but with his best judgment and intuition, goes on helping himself as the many with health, food, work, success, and spiritual emancipation. Working with good selfishness and sacred selfishness brings one in touch with God, who rests on the altar of all-expanding goodness. One who realizes this works conscientiously, only to please the ever-directing God of peace within. Chapter: Miracles of Raja Yoga. Compilation of a lecture and article of the same title, circa 1926-27, with quotations from Autobiography of a Yogi. A miracle is commonly considered to be an effect or event without law or beyond law. But all events in our precisely adjusted universe are lawfully wrought and lawfully explicable. The so-called miraculous powers of a great master are a natural accompaniment to his exact understanding of subtle laws that operate in the inner cosmos of consciousness. Nothing may truly be said to be a miracle, except in the profound sense that everything is a miracle. That each of us is encased in an intricately organized body, and is set upon an earth whirling through space among the stars, is anything more commonplace or more miraculous? From Autobiography of a Yogi. Raja Yoga, the royal yoga, is the science of God realization, a step-by-step means of reuniting the soul with spirit, man with his creator, developed by the rishis of ancient India with proven and uniform results. Raja Yoga was masterfully systematized by the great sage Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras. It combines the highest from all other yoga disciplines: devotion, right action, physical and mental self-control, and divine communion through scientific techniques of concentration and meditation. The fulfillment of the path, God realization, makes all things possible, for it teaches how to make the mortal immortal. The West excels in the physical sciences, which give us material knowledge and inventions. The East excels in spiritual science, which tunes the soul to the infinite. I find that the people in America, however, are yet very uneducated in the spiritual science and real truths of the East. There are many misconceptions. The real spiritual savant is not a magician or fortune teller. While I was in Seattle, I went to the immigration agency to apply for a visa to go to Vancouver, British Columbia. It was on that occasion that an immigration official became sarcastically fascinated with my ochre turban. I had waited in the office for some time, but the man at the desk made no attempt to attend to my wants, or even to acknowledge my presence. So I tapped on the counter to attract his attention. This finally succeeded in getting him to arise reluctantly from his desk and inquire as to my business there. The officer looked at me with scorn, his eyes fixed on my turban, and said, "Do you gaze at crystals, tell fortunes, swallow swords? Are you a snake charmer?" I assured him that it was not my purpose in America to tell fortunes or charm snakes. I was not a fakir. I had come to ask for a passport to Vancouver. I was told to come back the next day. The following day I returned with a book I had written and copies of some of my poems. I said nothing but presented these to him. He was surprised. When he had obligingly read a few lines and had a look of apology in his eye for his rash inference, I looked at him smilingly and said, "Dear officer, did you know that the Hindus never had any factory where they knew the art of making crystal balls? Crystals are of Western origin. Hence it is news to me that the Hindus gaze at crystals. As regards fortune tellers, there are quite a number right here in America as well as in India. But whenever you meet an American gentleman, do you ask him, 'Are you a fortune teller?' Every Hindu is not a fortune teller. They don't believe in flattering an unmarried woman by telling her fortune, saying that she is going to have a good wealthy husband, and then relieve her of $3 or $4 for this contrived forecast. Wise Hindus can teach you how to solve the problems of life and change your fortune. Your present poverty or opulence, disease or health, is brought about by your own past actions, and your present life and actions will determine your future. Spiritual savants can diagnose scientifically how the law of cause and effect applies to human actions and lives. They do not believe in fate, a predestined happening without a cause. They do not fool people by predictions conjured through the trickery of imagination, equivocal words, or fraud. The real Hindu astrologers make a scientific study of the law of causation governing human actions. And they do not merely tell you your past or predict your future, but rather teach you the art of averting an unwelcome event or stimulating the fruition of a desirable event coming to you as a result of your past evil or good actions. Good astrologers tell their students only what will benefit them, not what will merely satisfy idle curiosity. They say there is no use in telling you what is coming to you anyway, unless there is a way to control or regulate that self-created destiny. Sometimes ignorance is bliss. I said to the immigration officer, "Sir, I haven't had the singular, dangerous experience of swallowing swords or taming cobras, which our masterful street magicians often do in open daylight before the scrutinizing gaze of people. Though some may possess unusual powers, they are at the same time skilled in sleight-of-hand tricks. They perform magic by producing optical illusions. Therein the Eastern magician is superior to his Western counterpart." Then in a light mood, I challenged the officer. "I have seen some hypocritical Western people wearing hats and dress suits, but I never connected hypocrisy with the wearing of hats. How did you happen to connect snake chumming with my turban?" By this time the prejudicial wrinkles in the officer were smoothed out. In a very friendly tone he said, "I am sorry. No doubt many good turbaned Hindus have to suffer the persecution of public opinion because some turbaned Indians have produced a wrong impression on our people." I responded, "You cannot expect all Hindus to forsake turbans because some Hindus are far from exemplary, just as I do not expect all Western brothers to forsake their hats because some have practiced hypocrisy while wearing hats. Western tourists go to India and see our poorly dressed coolie laborers and watch the performances of the street magicians or fakirs, and they think the Indian needs to wear swallowtail coats and neckties to be civilized. Customs and mannerisms are non-essentials resulting from certain climatic influences. The real development of man consists of the development of his mind power. So the American tourist visiting India must take care not to misconceive the real yogis of India. The real yogis are distinctly different from the magicians, sword swallowers, instantaneous mango tree growers. The latter are mere entertainers. The former are great souls, very difficult to recognize because of their quiet, unassuming ways and simplicity, yet possessing divine knowledge and miraculous powers like those demonstrated by Christ. As Jesus said, "Except ye be converted, and become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself, he same is greatest in the kingdom of heaven." It is through divine simplicity and humility that one can attain great breadth of power and vast wisdom. Physical and mental miracles, the need for Raja Yoga. All creation is governed by law. The principles that operate in the outer universe, discoverable by scientists, are called natural laws. But there are subtler laws that rule the hidden spiritual planes and the inner realm of consciousness. These principles are noble through the science of yoga. It is not the physicist, but the self-realized master who comprehends the true nature of matter. By such knowledge Christ was able to restore the servant's ear after it had been severed by one of the disciples. Swami Sri Yukta swore in Autobiography of a Yogi, "There is no difference between physical laws and superlaws or miracles worked by the knowledge of the mechanism of the human mind." The Americans work miracles through use of physical laws. Advanced yogis work mental miracles. The operation of radio and telephoto cameras are still miracles to many Hindus, and the workable miracles of the mind so often displayed by the yogis of India are unknown to the Americans. In these days of marvels of constant inventions, it would be wise for the Americans to at least investigate thoroughly the discovery of spiritual miracles by their Hindu brothers. Miracles are nothing but the operation of supramental and cosmic laws. Jesus and the masterminds of India know how to operate them. To ordinary people such works appear as miracles, but they are really the result of natural operation of certain higher hidden laws. Yoga unites mind power with cosmic power. The Raja Yoga principles of concentration were easily practiced even by the Rajas or royalty of India who were engrossed with the multifarious duties of their states. These methods which bring power over one's own destiny and which can turn failure, material, moral, social, or spiritual, into success can fit in equally well with the busy and worried life of the Western Rajas and Maharajas, the American millionaires and billionaires. Human nature is everywhere the same. The American needs poise and spiritual strength just as much as the Hindu does. The American makes the machine work hard for him, while the Indian has to make his living by doing his work manually. Theoretically, therefore, the American businessman has more time than the proverbially spiritual Hindu to devote to developing mental miracles. The superiority of acquiring miraculous, mental powers over the acquirement of business skill is that the former has no limitations as does the latter. The ordinary intelligent businessman may be broken down by hard competition. When his business intelligence is exhausted, he utterly fails. But the Hindu savant says that when the intellectual resources give out, one does not need to give up. He can use his unlimited superpowers for the materialization of a desire. As God is all-powerful, so also by Raja Yoga, uniting with him consciously, man likewise becomes powerful. In trying to cure chronic disease, acquire success, or attain peace of mind through physical means, there are limitations. Everything is governed by the law of cause and effect.